3. Okay, oh, we're live. All right. This is Wednesday. Therefore, it must be Hawaii, the state of clean energy. And we have Jim Alberts with us. He's the Senior Vice President of Customer Service at Hawaiian Electric, and Mike Hamden from the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum is my co-host. And we'll talk about interconnection issues and solutions. And the newspaper made our agenda for us today. All we had to do is open the front page, and there it is with David Ige and his various points of interest. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thanks, Jay, and I don't know how you set that up to get the newspaper
He scripted the governor.
to do that for you.
I just made a call. Hi, Mike.
Hey.
Mike and I were at the Think Tech, what do you call it? We have this combination meeting every 6 months. It's the board of directors and the underwriters, of which Hawaiian Electric is an underwriter. And we had our staff there and our hosts and our friends and relatives. It was great.
It's good. Very good. Very nice.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Anyway, so happy to have you on the show, Jim.
Thank you. It's
Thank
good
you
to
for
be
coming
here.
down.
Appreciate it.
I hope you'll accommodate us. We're going to do our regular Negawatt moment for a minute with Larry Newman
Sure.
of
Hawaii Energy?
Hawaii Energy, I'll get it right. Larry, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jay. How are you?
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? I hope everyone else
Okay, now I
can.
can hear you.
From Hawaii Energy, we're the ratepayer-funded energy efficiency program for the state. So we're serving everyone on Oahu, Maui, Molokai, Lanai, and the Big Island. And I wanted to basically talk a moment about exterior LED lighting. The program reintroduced this incentive for this measure. Basically, these are outdoor lighting, typical in shopping malls, car lots, car dealerships. And it's one of the most cost-effective energy efficiency measures that a business can take. And unlike a lot of incentives and rebates that order money for stuff, this incentive is actually based on how much energy it can save. So we're going to pay you 15 cents a kilowatt hour, but that really adds up. Typical measure like this to install is going to cost you about $600 or $700 per fixture, like on a pole. But the rebate can lead up to about $250, $300. So the incentive can reach up to 50% of the cost. And the savings every year is at least that much. This efficiency measure of LED lighting can reduce energy consumption by 70%. So typical is a 400 watt metal halide. Some dealerships might even have something even more intense like that, maybe 1,000. But the new LED technology, which is changing rapidly, can reduce it to maybe 150 watts. So significant savings. And a lot of the savings also have to do with maintenance. LEDs last a long time. You need lifts to get up to to maintain the lighting. So it's really a no-brainer. So I would encourage any business that has exterior lighting to give Hawaii Energy a call. We've got a great staff of specialists that can help you scope out your project, lead you to some qualifying technologies, and also some potential contractors through our Clean Energy Ally program to help this project move forward quickly.
Wow. Okay, cross-examination?
The price of LEDs has come down quite a bit in the last year, hasn't it? Is it true for these particular ones as well?
I think LEDs in general across the board are becoming far more affordable than they have been. And one of the reasons why Hawaii Energy had to reposition how we offered this incentive was not only were they becoming less expensive, but they were becoming even more efficient. Just in the last 2 or 3 years, replacement technologies for a 400 watt metal halide lamp has gone from maybe a 40 or 50% reduction down to a 60 or 70% reduction. So to stay with the times, we've had to make sure that we're paying for the energy savings so these projects really get the incentive they deserve to move forward.
Larry, we have LEDs all around the studio here, and it was a tremendous improvement when we put them in because they're cool, they're totally adjustable, they're long-lasting, and they're cheaper. But query, how do they work outside? I mean, in a certain sense, they're more fragile, aren't they?
The technology that we incent have to meet certain standards. So the fixtures and technology that we incent have to satisfy a number of industry benchmarks, if you will. most people are familiar with the Energy Star label. So that infers that, hey, they've been tested for the application that they're going to be applied to. But there's also the Design Lights Consortium and also Lighting Facts. So there are a number of industry groups that do the testing and qualification so that these measures are being applied in the right environment. Because to your point, you don't want to put a lighting technology like you have in your studio outside. It's not going to work properly, it's not going to last. But with the right technology, the right housing, overall the fixture and the installation is all important in making sure that you have the right solution to the right problem.
And long-lasting, aren't they? I mean, knock wood, I'm knocking wood. These bulbs have lasted a long time. We don't,
Yeah.
there's multiple bulbs in there. Theoretically, if a bulb fails, a little one, you can put another replace little one in there, and then you're complete.
And you may not even notice.
Yes.
But that's an important point, especially with exterior lighting, because often it may require lifts. And lifts are expensive. They usually require a two-man crew. So it can get very expensive. So when you're replacing, when you think about the technology that's out there today, the metal halides or HIDs, their useful life is about 2 years. So every 2 years, you got to go buy that lift. You got to rent the lift. You got to get the two guys for to get the work done. But with an LED, they have 80, 100,000 hours of life. They can last, it depends on your operating hours, of course, but it's not unusual for a fixture like that to last 5, 6 years or more. So it's a big maintenance savings in addition to your energy savings.
Okay, and the number one more, do you have questions?
Well, I just wanted to give a ringing endorsement for energy efficiency. I think investments in LEDs for lighting replacements and other measures are a critical part of the overall solution. It's part of a system, so taking those off the table are megawatts we never have to generate for. So thanks for doing that.
You're here. Yeah, sounds good.
So Larry, tell us again exactly where to call and how to get this benefit.
Well, the best way to get in touch with the business team is calling 839-8880. We've got a team ready to help you out, answer all your questions. And you can always hit our website, of course, at hawaiienergy.com.
hawaiienergy.com. Thank you, Larry Newman. Thanks for coming down.
Thanks, Larry.
Thanks
Sounds
for your
good.
support.
Thank you.
Aloha. Okay, we're going to move on to, I guess we're going to move on to the front page.
Great.
What on the front page interests you today, Jim?
Well, it's such a great body of work. I think if I looked across the summary box on the top page there, the notion of PV and how we make this a sustainable program in terms of fairness for everyone, and it has to be reliable for the whole grid. So I think it's great to put this out there in the public domain and really recognize that those issues have to be addressed, because it's going to take multiple solutions. There's no real silver bullet here. And it involves lots of things, all the way from making sure systems are sized properly to making sure we've got the right safety measures on each circuit to make sure customers are safe. So I think the landscape has been laid, and I like the fact that it's a broad landscape. It's not just looking at one narrow issue. And we've talked about this before on the last show, I think it's important to not focus so much on creating as much generation as we can, but answering the question, how much do we need?
Yeah.
And being able to optimize the costs for customers, because that's our primary concern, is what's in the best interest of customers.
I'm always I always begin and end with the same thought, and that is, here we are in the most historic time imaginable in terms of energy in Hawaii. We are in a transformation. It's like lucky to be alive that we are here now on the planet, all of us, enjoying every little day with this fantastic transformation happening around us. It's not just Larry Newman. It's everything. It's everybody.
But there are hard questions here. I mean, hard questions in terms of fairness to the people that are on the grid and the people that are off the grid, and fairness to those people who bought systems and have been waiting to get interconnected. And it's, but I know there's been a lot of consternation about the whole situation.
Well, let's break it down, I mean, I want to go one step further in my comment about transformation, is that transformations are never easy.
Right.
Somebody always, by definition, is a little unhappy, and somebody is a little too happy. So a transformation involves a balancing or a rebalancing of all the factors in play, and that's what makes it so interesting.
It is, and one comment I would make is like any growth strategy, so solar PV is a good growth strategy, it's really taken off. But if you look at what we need to do here in Hawaii, because we're an island grid, is how do we make sure we have a diverse set of resources? And that's the headline for the whole article is, how do you make sure we do what's best for the state and the people who live here to provide energy in the most affordable, reliable way we can?
Right, with diversity, because diversity is reliability.
It is.
You know, we have to use it all. And we are blessed indeed that we have these, you know, all these diverse sources. But let's break it, some of it down. Let's see. This is one that I have thought about for a long time. Part of the interview with David Ige about energy, his energy policy, to the extent that, you know, as the executive, he can have one. He agrees that future rooftop solar customers will have to accept lower payments for the power they generate. This is the net energy metering issue.
It is.
And I want you to know, if you didn't, and on Think Tech here, we have advocated for this change a long time and felt that, you know, that the only way to democratize this is to do exactly what he's saying and what you're asking for.
It is. And I think the important part of that is that even with that change, it's still a good deal. I think for anybody who wants to make that investment or make that choice, we want to make sure they have that option, but they need to understand what the cost of that option is so that it can be a market-based decision.
Yeah, very important. So now the status of that is pending in the PUC now?
It is.
The net, you made a request for an adjustment of the net energy metering program.
We did. We made an interim request, but last week there was a letter agreement signed between Alan Oshima and the new chair of the PUC to give everybody a little bit more time, so that has been deferred into the DER docket, which has been out there. And that way all the parties have plenty of time and opportunity to make sure that all of the feedback, all the input is gathered, and that we understand the issues from every perspective, because that's the only way we end up with a good decision. So we're supportive of that.
Yeah, well, I guess going into that letter agreement, Hawaiian Electric wanted an answer from them quickly.
We did.
And they weren't sure they could do that, especially with their, you know, recent reorganization.
Right.
So at the end of the day, it sounds to me, I mean, I'm not there, but it sounds to me like this was really good process because somebody called somebody and there had to be a meeting for a joint letter like that. Somebody had to talk to somebody. And I always felt, you know, that the PUC has the authority to make a call like that. And has the obligation, in my view, under that same authority, to take a call like that. And why not can't they talk? And this, you had to have a conversation in order to reach a joint letter, am I right?
Yes. So I think the good news is that there was an agreement reached and we can keep progress going. And it's what I've said before in other shows, that if we can get the parties together and we can agree on things without having everything be contested, we make progress much faster. Everybody may not get everything they want, but if we can come to agreement on the 80% solution and move it forward, customers benefit, and that should be what's in our interest.
Yeah. So that was actually a good thing that happened. I mean, in terms of Randy Iwase's arrival on the scene and, you know, essentially the first, am I right, the first significant decision? I mean,
I
to
think
me.
so.
Yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah.
it's the first one.
And it worked well. Good for him.
But
Shout out to Randy.
But this coming together, I mean, that was really the motivation behind the Energy Policy Forum. Because when Robbie Am and I first talked about the idea, everything back before we got started was a food fight in either the PUC or in the legislature.
Yeah.
And just getting people used to talking to each other was probably our best accomplishment.
Yeah, well, it is a noteworthy accomplishment, but it is a lesson for so many other issues.
It is.
I mean, for example,
It
if this kind of process had been used in dealing with the rail issue a few years ago, we'd be a happier camper now, or happier camper now, anyway. So maybe this is actually more than just the one issue. Maybe this is a process point that can be useful on other issues going forward.
I think it is. And then one thing I would mention before we move off that topic, when I first moved here 3 years ago, I moved here because of this revolution in the energy business. I think it's a great opportunity. I got to work with Robbie.
Yeah.
So Robbie taught me a lot about Hawaii and how to operate. So I appreciate that. Thanks to Robbie. But I do think, if we think about this as a system and we think about the whole community, it's the customers that we want to help. It's not about our own interests. And if we focus on that and we focus on the process that gets us there the fastest and in the most economical way and the safest way, that's the best outcome. When we get into these situations where they're long contested processes, that doesn't benefit many people.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling, not to mouth off, but my feeling is if somebody wants to make a statement, okay, make a statement, and then the regulator hears that statement, and at a maximum, he allows rebuttal by everyone in the field, all the interveners, for example, in a given issue, and then they get to make a rebuttal statement, and then it's done, that's it. What you don't need is go back and forth, iteration after iteration. You never get finished that way.
Right.
Well, the other thing that's helping is the fact that Hawaiian Electric has started to approve the hookups.
Yes.
That's, people are feeling good about that, and that's kind of bettered the relations among everybody.
Let's take a moment break, and then we'll come back and talk about the hookups, because I think everybody is interested in that. And we're so happy to have you here to discuss it.
Great, thank you.
That's Jim Alberts, Hawaiian Electric Senior Vice President of Customer Service, here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy, with me and Mike Hamnet. We're talking about interconnection issues and solutions, because we're interested in solutions. We really are. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Andrew Howard. I'm an astronomer at the Institute for Astronomy at the University of Hawaii up in Manoa. I'd like to tell you about the annual open house that we're having this year. It is on April 6th, 11 to 4 p.m. It's an all ages event, kids, grown-ups, even people in between, everyone is welcome. We have a lot of really fun activities. You get to meet astronomers, look at yourself in an infrared camera, play with Legos, make robots, look at videos. You can even make some of the kids like to make comets out of gravel and snow. Even adults like to do that too. You'll be able to look at the sun with a solar camera safely. It's really a great activity. We do this every year in April, and I hope to see you this year. Thanks.
Aloha, I'm Hunter Hevlin, host of Sustainable Hawaii here at ThinkTech Hawaii. You can tune in every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. to see interviews with sustainability professionals from around the state and even further abroad, learning about activities with water management, food security, waste management, and a whole host of other fascinating opportunities to get engaged with making a greener island. So if you're interested in making the transition from consuming individuals to communities of producers, check us out every
Okay,
Thursday.
we're back. We're live. We're here with Jim Alberts here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy. He is the Hawaiian Electric Senior Vice President of Customer Service. We're talking about interconnect issues and solutions here with my co-host Mike Hamnet of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. So we promised them before the break that we would talk about the point that Mike raised, and that is namely the interconnect, the number of people who are out there as of October 1st, and what kind of progress has been made since then in reducing the waiting list.
Sure, so a couple of things have happened maybe since the last show when we talked about this. There was a collaborative effort with the industry, Hawaiian Electric, the National Renewable Labs, and Solar City and Enphase got together and went about and tested capabilities of inverters to get all the facts on the table. And that ties directly to what we said earlier. Getting all the facts on the table, people agreeing on those, move forward. It worked out great. So we were able to overcome one of our major barriers to interconnections, which was transient overvoltage. And that just protects homes from these big surges in voltage that come into the house.
Transient over,
Voltage.
what is that?
It's just a power surge.
Okay.
Yep, so just make sure that that inverter can shut down fast enough so it protects everything. So once we resolved that, it was a major issue. There are still many other issues that have to be resolved, but it was one of the things that was holding up interconnections. So once we broke through that, we've now raised our interconnection circuit limitation from 120% of daytime minimum load to 250% of daytime minimum load. And
Can you explain that? Why is it safe to do that?
Sure. So like I said, the big barrier was this power surge problem. And the new inverters have capabilities that the older inverters didn't have. So we're leveraging the equipment that the homeowner has in the inverter without having to invest in a lot of things on the grid. In
It's
this
basically a
case,
big circuit breaker.
yes. So it's good news that that investment helps solve part of the problem. It's part of the whole grid that way, in a sense, it interacts together. Now, that's helped us really process a lot of applications. So we've approved, year-to-date, almost 4,000 applications
Out of the 5.
up for interconnection. Now, we've approved a bunch that were backlogged in the queue, but we're also approving applications that have come in since then.
Sure.
Because they're on lower penetration circuits and we can move those through. But we made a commitment, we'd get 90% of all of these customers backlogged by the end of April. And I'm pleased to report, our mid-checkpoint by March 15th, we're a little bit ahead of target. And I think it's very, very strongly committed to meeting that goal at the end of April. There might be a few customers that are near the end. If there are some real safety issues when we do the final check, we might have to make some upgrades.
Right.
But we'll look at each of those on a case-by-case basis. So we're feeling really good about our capability to deliver on that commitment.
That's great. You said you would do it, and by George, and by James, excuse me,
Yes.
you're doing it.
And it's a key principle in the company. We know that we've made this commitment and we're going to deliver on it. And we're going to keep doing that over and over.
That's good. So, are you getting applause as you walk down the street on this, Jim?
I haven't got any applause walking down the street, but I've gotten a lot of phone calls from people I interact with regularly about their applications, and they're very happy to finally hear that they can interconnect. And many of them are actually coming back saying now that they do appreciate the fact that we care about reliability and safety.
Yeah.
So the original frustration is just, they were frustrated they couldn't interconnect, but they do care about the broader issues.
Yeah.
It just strikes me that there's something here, and that is that with technology, with these new breakers or whatever, elements of smart grid are involved in making this happen, we can go further than before, maybe even further than we thought, if we incorporate this kind of new technology.
Well, looking back 5 years or so, HECO thought they could put a lot less PV and wind on the system here on Oahu
Right.
than they could, even the responsiveness of the big steam plants. They're much more responsive than anybody thought they would. And I remember Scott Sue being on the program once saying that he goes to the energy conferences on the mainland, and mainland utilities don't believe that it's technically possible to put as much on the grid as we do.
Yeah, we got leadership.
We really are innovators in our industry.
Yeah.
I think here in Hawaii, out of necessity, we're solving a lot of problems that haven't been solved before.
And we're not on the bleeding edge
Right.
right now.
No, that's right. And I think this approach of doing things incrementally and doing it in a safe and a prudent, sustainable way is the right way. Because electricity is such a big part of our economy, we just can't take those kind of risks.
Well, I think what's been a problem over, the last 3 or 4 years has been the public relations aspect of this.
Yeah.
And you get to a certain place in your public relations continuum where people are just unhappy with whatever happens, good, bad, or otherwise. They're just always unhappy. And maybe, this letter agreement thing is a sign of better times. Sure, each side of it had to give some, and there are concessions that you had to make. But maybe the process there can make it easier on the public relations side. This has got to be a lot of what you do, Jim. Yeah?
It is, and I do think that helps a lot. The fact that people look in and they see the interested parties working together on a common cause, even though we have disagreements on some of the issues, the fact we can focus on the things we agree on and move forward for the benefit of customers
Yeah.
is key.
And over time, I think that will actually change the way people perceive Hawaiian Electric and the way people perceive, problems. Instead of blaming people, they'll be looking for solutions, which is a
Well,
much
it's also
better way to
it's
go.
also a trust issue, and I think seeing movement helps restore trust, and over time, I think that's kind of where we need to go.
Yeah.
I think it does, and I wish everybody could look inside the company and see how hard every one of our employees works to make this happen. It takes a lot of dedication and a lot of commitment, and it's really invisible to many people, but people are truly working hard to make this happen.
Well, one of the things that Alan said, and I mean, he's the guy that said he was going to reduce the number of people in the pipeline October 1st. I think we had him on the show on that
His
very
first
day.
day.
That very day. Was that he was going to do this, and it just strikes me that this has got to be a feather in the cap. It's a new approach. It builds credibility. We're in a new time, and one of the things he said is what I'm getting. It takes me a while to get my point. One of the things he said is he's going to try to change the corporate culture. He's going to try to get people to think in terms of nimble change, adopting new technologies quickly, changing the old style way of utility thinking to a more modern. Has that happened? Is it happening?
It really is, and I think if you look across the country, it's a wave that's going to happen everywhere. In our industry, there's a lot of need for lots of accuracy and lots of precision, but there's got to be a balance. So the need to move things forward as quickly as we can and have good speed to meet customers' expectations, because that's the bottom line. We have to meet customers' expectations in this arena and many others, and if we do that, then it works.
And it's a cultural shift from being concerned about electricity to being concerned about customer service.
It is.
It really is a change, and
Right.
it's hard.
It's like design thinking. You have to figure out exactly what the real problem is.
Right.
So if I say, what is customer satisfaction, customer service in general, what am I really talking about? I'll give you my answer. A, they want to wait. They want their interconnect right now. That's one thing, and that's what makes them unhappy if they can't get it. And B is price. It's probably, I should name that first, price. So and of course the clean energy initiative changed from clean to cheap somewhere along the line here in the last few years.
Not too long ago.
And now Hawaiian Electric is saddled really with trying to make clean into cheap. But everybody knows that clean costs money because of the infrastructure you have to put in.
Right.
They know that, and that was on the NPR show I talked to you about earlier.
Yeah.
If you want to build new transmission lines, if you want to build new, devices, new smart grid devices.
Somebody's got to pay for it.
Somebody's got to pay for it. It doesn't come from heaven, So it comes ultimately from, either ratepayers or Hawaiian Electric's capital concentration. So the question is, how can you do that? It's a very difficult chore to feed the customer what expectations is the word, when the expectations may not be entirely practical.
Right. Well, I'd answer that in a couple ways. One, when we look holistically at this, our power supply improvement plan, we wanted to make sure we were going to accomplish three major goals. One was, how do we achieve our overall goal of 65% renewables by 2030? How do we do that in a fair and consistent way? How do we nearly triple distributed generation at the same time? And how do we lower bills by 20%? So the plan involves a couple of strategic moves. One is to bring LNG in to replace oil in the interim. And the LNG prices at the time were much lower. Today, oil and LNG might be
About on par.
comparable, but we have to think long term because oil prices are volatile and they will likely go back up. And we have to stay committed to that plan, I think, in the long run to make sure we find the right balance for customers.
Now, there are those that say LNG is not really a bridge, but it's it's permanent. That because the practical matter, it's like what I've heard argued is, how do you make LNG temporary when the legislature, in its infinite wisdom, can change that temporary into permanent any day of the week? How do you make it really temporary?
Yeah, I think making sure the deal is structured properly, and I tend to think of almost everything as temporary because,
The world's changing so fast.
permanent is a long time.
True.
So everything you do in almost every business has a bit of an incremental approach to it. So we have to make sure as we go through this transition away from fossil fuels to renewable energy is done in the right way so it doesn't increase bills for people. Because in the end, I think people want renewables, but they also want low cost. because in the world environment and the world economy, we have to compete here with many other places. So we have to find the right balance. And if we find that right balance, take the variability, because energy stability costs are important too in this, take that out of the equation, transfer to a higher fixed cost. But people have to be willing to look at that and agree that that's the right plan. As you transition away from high variable cost to higher fixed cost,
Yeah.
it's a big transition.
We're going to make a transition too. It's a little transition, though. It's a different kind of transition. It's
Is
called a
this the
break.
next segment?
Break.
That's Jim Alberts and also Mike Hamnet. We're here talking about interconnect issues and solutions, and we're finding some. We'll be right back.
Aloha, my name is Josh Green. I host a show called Healthcare in Hawaii here on ThinkTech. We get together once a week or sometimes twice a month. Depends. When we're busy, we get together less often, but we love to see you here to talk about the preeminent healthcare issues in our state. Our programs vary very widely. We talk about economics, we talk about healthcare, we talk about...
Aloha, my name is Paul Jackson, better known as PJ, and my local interest is in sports. I have my own sports radio show at KWAI AM 1080 that you can stream live. I also have my own website, pjsportsradio.com. We have live guests in studio, and we talk about discussions and topics that everyone wants to know locally here on the islands. We cover everything from surfing to basketball to whatever's going on locally, sports-wise. We try to do our best and cover the topics in depth as much as we can. Once again, thank you for joining PJ here on Hawaii Sports Update. Mahalo.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here with Jim Alberts. He's the Senior Vice President of Customer Service of Hawaiian Electric, and my co-host, Mike Hamnet, talking about interconnect issues and solutions. And as we left it, we were involved in examining the LNG issue, which as a way to meet the expectations that people have or have lately come to have about getting
Lower prices.
Lower prices. You know, and one possible, I guess the way I see it is that LNG could hold the line for a while. I mean, if expectations include they expect it's not going to go higher,
Right.
and if we can achieve at least a normalcy, that would be better than if they go higher. And you have a problem is if you're going to put money in, they could go higher. So the idea is to put all this in a way so they don't go higher and ultimately they go lower. You know?
Right. And I think stability is a big part of that question too, which we talked about was, you know, from a company's perspective, they put together their business plans, they're looking for a way to budget effectively. So when oil prices are very volatile and those prices are jumping up and down, it's hard on our local community and our local businesses. So transitioning to a fuel that's more stable, more readily available as a bridge fuel in an aspirational goal to move to 100% renewables is a good strategy.
Yeah, it's not clear, I think. We've had Sasha Fisharaki come and talk to the forum about where oil prices and LNG prices are going. And he's got a break-even price. And it's the problem with LNG is not unlike the problem we've had with renewables since the first oil shock. Every time we start to get renewables going, the price of oil drops, and everybody says, "Well, we don't have to do it now."
Right.
And so it's a matter of
Slows you down.
yeah, it does. It really does.
But you know what? I mean, it's sort of like in the world where technology can move with incredible speed on something you never heard of. You know, disruptive technology can change any of this in 1 minute.
Right.
I mean, if I, for example, came up with a new form of PV that was significantly more powerful, not a little, but a lot more
Yeah.
powerful, that would change things. And if I came up with, you know, other, say, elements on the smart grid, that would change things. And maybe, you know, if you say there's going to take 5 or 6 or 7 years to put LNG in, that leaves 5 or 6 or 7 years for some disruptive technology to pop up and change the landscape. You know, and I feel that still remains a logical possibility anyway.
Sure.
And we aren't going to do LNG overnight.
Right.
I mean,
No, we're not.
much as the case can be made for it, the fact is there's so many obstacles, really, isn't it?
I think that even though there are, when we look down the road, and this is my opinion, when we look down the road and we look toward this future of 100% renewables, it's going to take a while to get there. Even our plan that shows 65% renewables by 2030 is a big
Ambitious.
step. But a key part of that is, just like the headline says, diversification. So there are many renewables that can provide better capacity factors, like wind, and on the Big Island, we've got geothermal power as a base load capability. So I think if we keep that in mind and we don't focus on any one fuel and we provide the right balance, that helps. And then when we look in the near term, if we work the right deal, if it is a bridge strategy, structuring the deal in the right way so it has the right exit paths along the way, when these breakthrough technologies come about, that's a good thing. Because there's a big growing market for LNG across the world.
Yeah, true, which may affect its price, will affect its price. one
Yeah,
way or the other.
when they first started talking, well, a couple years ago, when they first started looking at the cost of LNG infrastructure, they were talking about sort of an $800 million investment onshore facilities or some sort of an offshore facility. And that's a big nut to crack, and it's something that people are hesitant to have the state invest in. And personally, I think the answer is have it turnkey. I mean, have the supplier bear the risk on that if they're willing to do that, if you can get it at a decent price with them doing that.
But the state has to incentivize and stand out of the way. I think it's been one of the problems. It's like what happened, for example, well, I don't want to talk about the NextEra deal right now, but it just seems to me that you can't have everybody in every issue. Sometimes you just have to have somebody say, follow me, boys, this is what we're going to do. And if you have everybody in every issue and trying to reach consensus on every issue, you won't. And
Right.
you won't make any progress.
Well, and there's been a leadership vacuum on the whole energy issue since the forum
That's true,
started.
that's true, Mike. And it's largely a question of leadership.
And somebody that's willing to stick their neck out and say, I'll wear it if it goes south.
Right, exactly. But I wanted to raise one of the point, on this headline. thing.
Sure.
Diversity is the key, and to me, one of the diversity issues is, are we going to do this distributed, or are we going to do it statewide? Some people, some points of direction, factors in this transformation suggest, a smaller grid. Talk about microgrids now, and or grids by the island, and we're never going to connect the islands. And then David Ige said believes that a decision on an Oahu Maui power cable should be driven by the community. I'm not sure I know what that means or what community he's talking about, or how you find out that the
Right.
community feels one way. They take a vote? What is that? You listen to the loudest voices? Not a good idea. But can we talk about that? Because it seems to me, and I'm going back to the NPR program on Oklahoma this morning with
Right.
transmission lines, is you can be much more efficient if you can deliver low-cost renewable energy from point A to point B,
If they're close together.
if you have a transmission line.
Right.
And we don't really have major transmission lines because we need undersea cables to have major transition lines. And what is the position of the company? What are your considerations going forward about the interrelationship of having transmission between islands and lowering price to meet customer expectations?
Yeah, I think our position on that is neutral. If it makes sense for the community, then that's a good investment. Now, when we did our power supply improvement plan, when we looked at all the renewables that are coming on every island, because originally, and this gets to your point about technology advancements, originally Oahu was struggling trying to add renewables. But with the advent of new inverter capabilities, PV has really taken off. So when you run the numbers and you run the analysis, it just wasn't economic in that analysis. Now, other people may have different opinions, and that's why I think we have to come to a decision once and for all. So I like the way the governor framed this up to say, let's get it on the table, let's move forward with a plan, rather than just debating this thing around the edges forever.
Well, part of the issue for both LNG as well as the seabed cable is that let's get some real costs. Because until we start to, go put requests for proposals or requests for bids out there, we don't really know what it's going to cost. We can get a bunch of academics to kind of pencil out what they think it's going to be, but until somebody's going to come up and sign a contract, you really don't know.
That's right.
I know it sounds like a silly comparison, but to build the cable is something, you heard it from me, About $1 billion.
Right.
Okay, give or take. Right? And to build the rail today, who knows, actually, you know, Parsons Brinckerhoff tripled its budget in Boston on the Big Dig. So who knows where 6 billion goes later. But just, let's say 6 billion. 6 billion toward energy infrastructure would give us cheap energy, because the more money you put into efficient infrastructure, the better, am I right?
Yep.
The better the price will be at the end of the line.
Right.
And so if I can give the state, or at least the most industrialized parts of the state, cheap energy, ample cheap energy, I can build, I know this from Economics 101, Samuelson, I can build a better economy, and people won't even realize it's happening, but next time you look, you'll find the economy of our state is in better shape because they have, you know, cheap energy. And so I see that as a huge advantage, consistent with experience elsewhere in many places. And I'll promise you, it won't be $1 more than $1 billion, Mike.
Okay, fair enough. Can I get you to sign a contract for that?
Sure.
You know, it's a process, right? And it's a transformation. So having a vision on how to get there is where we have to come to agreement. And we just incrementally work our way there. New technologies will come along and it'll cause us to change and shift. But as long as we have a line of sight of where we need to go, that helps everybody see where we're headed. And I do agree that upgrading the infrastructure is important, because energy is a broader topic than just electric generation. Transportation is a big part of what we import here for oil. So if we think about the grid as a whole and the need for the grid, it's not only to provide low-cost energy and high value to everybody, it's to allow us to accommodate this diversity of renewables, because there are some really good low-cost renewables, and they're very site-specific. So you pick the optimal site, but you've got to get it to where people can use it. And then also being able to use that for transportation is key. And even down at the docks, being able to displace some of the energy that gets used there for electricity. Transportation is a big part of what we have to do. So thinking about this together is important.
Yeah, and we really have, I mean, we've done relatively well on renewables, on renewables and efficiency on the electricity side.
We have.
Compared to transportation. It's just, that's a really tough.
But you know, just was it last week, Stan Osserman of HCAT, Hawaii Center for Advanced Transportation Technology, was telling us that there are now production cars showing this Friday at the convention center in the car show, which are production hydrogen cars. The Miura, I think, is the name of the car, and that's Toyota. But there'll be others. There are others. And so hydrogen could be a big feature here. And the thing about hydrogen is it only takes 90 seconds to fill up your tank. That you can make it yourself if you have the money for a machine to convert. Say it again?
Hydrolyzer?
Hydrolyzer, I think it is. And this is the biggest part of all, talking about undersea cable, you can move hydrogen around on a barge in a carbon fiber tank that's safe and relatively easy to move. And if you can do that, you can take the benefit of relatively cheap clean energy from one island to another. Is there any thought being given to this? Is this something that appeals to you, Jim?
We believe in the diversification of the whole portfolio. I mean, it makes us stronger, just like it makes your 401k investments stronger, because these disruptive technologies are going to keep coming in. And if you bet the farm too heavily on any one thing, you take a lot of risk on. Now, there will be years where it would have looked better to do just one thing, but in the long run, that diversification is key. So having room for everybody is important.
Yeah, I heard a story this morning about fuel cells in cars being used to generate electricity for the home.
How interesting.
Yeah, and you can have it in a sense both ways. If you have PV on your roof, you can make the hydrogen, put it in the fuel cell, and at night you can use the fuel cell in the car to run the house.
Right.
Talk about transformation.
Yeah,
Doing
exactly.
wonderful times, this is fabulous. Everything is on the table. That's, whoops. I didn't want to say this.
Well, it is an exciting time. I think there are so many options and opportunities out there today. But at the end of the day, we have to have an actionable plan to serve customers, because if all we do is talk about options and scenarios, nobody benefits. So having a plan we can agree on and implement to serve customer needs, that's what we need.
What's the best path going forward right now, Jim? What do you see as the most efficient way to get to where we need to go?
Without covering all of our plans that we filed, I think our view would be we've got to have the right balance. So the 65% commitment to renewables, but we have to have some backup generation as a transition in order to move to newer technologies like storage and hydrogen down the road, because it's our obligation to provide that reliability. We live on an island, so if we take too many risks and something goes wrong, then our community really suffers. So we have to provide that level of reliability and to have an eye toward the future. So that 65% commitment to renewables is an important goal for us. Aspirationally, it could be more, but let's work together on that.
Okay. Hope you come back as
come
we go
back.
down the road
Sure.
and take measurements from time to time. Mike, it falls on you as the co-host. I'm so sorry. It falls on you as the co-host to sum up and close.
Well, I think things are starting to move, and I think the fact that HECO's getting people hooked up to the grid and fulfilling that commitment. I think the fact that Randy Awase is now at the PUC and sort of he's got his eye on the ball, and I'm just optimistic that things are starting to move.
Yeah, I feel the same way. This is a good time. Maybe it all has something to do with you, Jim.
Oh, I don't know. I think we have a great team at Hawaiian Electric. The people there are so committed to our community. They really are. We just set a new record in our company for the Aloha United Way Fund. We have such a caring group. They're really good.
We're doing a show with them starting in April.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, they're gonna bring their various charity beneficiaries down and introduce us to all the people
Oh, that's great.
They support. Jim Alberts, Hawaiian Electric Senior Vice President of Customer Service, here with Mike Hamden and me, a discussion of interconnect issues and solutions on Hawaii, the state of clean energy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
Aloha.